welcome everybody that is here, of course, live on Thursday. It's the middle of July, it's hot, and everybody's trying to make things happen in the cool environment of their office or in the car on the way here and there. That's what we do, right? Business is constantly on the move. And every month, we try to have a special guest in this community that brings an elevated pulse on what's happening in the market, whether it be through marketing or technology or changes, skills and takeaways, things can really impact the community around them. So I'm very, very grateful to our amazing community leaders that are here with us live and our community members that are going to be part of this conversation. And I'm very grateful to you, Manny, man of the hour here, for joining us and sharing your insights. Manny, one of the things we always do is, because this is a conversation and it is recorded, we've got a little bit of an intro, right? So one of the things I want to say is, for those of you that are here live, cameras on, thank you for being here, being present, and being part of this conversation. If you're here, cameras off, and you're going to exist in the chat or just listen in, that's cool too. Like, this is an expanding conversation. We love that. And then, of course, this is recorded. So hopefully some of the people that registered and didn't have a chance to come in and meet or participate can continue this conversation online. And of course, Manny, we love that you're here. We want you to know who's here for you. So I'm going to have everybody introduce themselves on the call that's wanting to be part of this conversation, and then we'll turn it over to you. So I'll lead that dance. My name's Adam Griggs. I'm the moderator here. I have the pleasure of bringing in amazing people, just like Mr. Manny Larcher, founder of Collaborate and Elevate, which is going to be a fantastic topic today. And I'm going to throw it over to my friend, Patty Farmer.
Thanks, Adam. I'm excited to be here. So my name is Patty Farmer. I'm a marketing and media strategist and speaker. And I love working with people to help them make their marketing profitable, not painful. So that's what I'm all about. So I'll hand it over to Tamara.
Hi, Manny. My name is Tamara. I've been a member of this Own It, Love It for a couple of years, and I'm also in marketing. I really help amplify people's message and build connection. So yeah, thank you for being here.
Oh, I'm in demand. I had two people call my name out. That's awesome. Manny, nice to meet you. I'm looking forward to your session today. So I'm Patrick Kagan. I'm the president and founder of PK Solutions Group, and we specialize in creating better outcomes for leadership, for sales, and for teams in general. So I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say. And I will bounce it over to Pierce if he's there.
I certainly am. Yeah, I'm a technical founder here in Central Ohio. I met Manny through the morning mentoring group on the Alloy runs down in Cincinnati. And so we've kind of stayed loosely connected, met up at a couple events here and there, and this topic sounded awesome. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, man. Thanks for joining us, Pierce. And I appreciate that. Camera broken, but you're here being part of the conversation. I think we're good. Manny, why don't we get a little bit of background into who you are, the founding of Collaborate and Elevate, and really what's going on in your world?
Yeah, no, thank you. Appreciate you, Adam. Do you remember when was the first time we did this? I'm trying to put a date.
I feel like it was probably late 2020, man. I feel like it was
late 2020. Okay. All right. Yeah, so that's good. So yeah, Manny Larcher. I'm a first generation American. Both my parents are from St. Lucia. So I was born in Columbus, Ohio, and then from 5 to 11 lived in St. Lucia and came back to Columbus and pretty much was raised in Hilliard. And went to school for my dad was a musician. He had a group called Identity, a reggae group, and it was like 5 guys together. And a long story short, they were signed, they were touring around, really almost around America. And I've always had that creative side, but my dad's way, from a creative standpoint, kind of way cooler, you know what I mean? They were on stages. But as a youngin', I do remember the band breaking up, and it always, I think, led me to understand business and how business works. So I went to Bowling Green one year, then I kind of transferred to Columbus State and Ohio State, and I kind of fizzled out. And marketing was the focus. And around that time, you have to have a Facebook account and all these things. So gravitated towards tech. I'll date myself. I'm 35 right now. So I gravitated towards tech, and at that time also got a job in finance, really around unsecured finance, and really giving people different options to handle their unsecured financing, so credit cards, and that gave me a lot of knowledge from a sales standpoint. And then about 25, I was lucky to well, I launched a year before that, I launched a website called yourinfodaily.com, all about promoting musicians and helping them. And then we also put movie premieres out. And at that time, just really trying to figure things out. I built it myself, and Kevin Hart would retweet it for The Wedding Ringer. And then so like at this time, I'm working numerous jobs, and it's also Columbus Startup Week. So I go to this event, I'm getting like 30,000 hits, and also have a job, and I'm telling people this, and basically it led to someone saying, hey, why don't you come on to my startup? We're going to raise some capital. So that startup was Ardina, which we raised from local Columbus Revel Ventures and Cardinal Health. That company would go on to be strategically acquired by Cardinal Health a couple of years later. And just full transparency, that wasn't really it was a great process, but it wasn't really a big liquidity event for anybody, more of a learning process. And then for me, that was the time where I was a part of something where, I felt like we could have executed a little bit better from a marketing standpoint. And I was completely oblivious to what was going on from a boardroom standpoint. I didn't felt comfortable asking for equity. It was just a whole, like, I was oblivious. It was like everything was Mandarin. So, and that was really that was, I would say probably end of 2016. So then that led to just like, I need to learn more about, how do you build companies, way more than I need to learn. And, I just read a lot of books, but one really good podcast I think is This Week in Startups. Jason Calacanis, he has a book called Angel. And I think he has a very similar story. He's now, an All In podcast. So he's a very big reputation now. If you're in the business, some people probably don't even know who he is, right? But he has a really good book called Angel. Brad Fell has a really good book, Venture Deals. So really, I would just say, and then I was also working with some investors as a scout. Essentially, a scout, someone that finds companies for them to invest in, and then they're paid via consulting, typically. And did that with a few people. And so in 2017, the person that I was in the trenches with at that marketing agency, Lenny, and I started Stopwatch Creative, pretty much building websites, partnering up with software shops, building apps. We've helped 4 companies acquire from 2019, 2020, 2021. Essentially, we're part of 4 of our clients sold their companies and exits, and we were part of that process. But before that, in 2017, one of the people I was working with was also a very big investor in Ohio, and I actually spoke with his partner today, Danny Ortiz. So I'll give him a shout out. Michael Red and Danny Ortiz, they own a group called the Wave Columbus, and they had essentially a free co-working office. I managed it, and basically through that process, I was very focused on growing Stopwatch Creative. But a lot of people reached out to me for connection, to people for advice. So we started doing an event called Collaborate and Elevate. And we did monthly events, featured people, and really, the pandemic kind of obviously put a halt to that. And then during that time, I basically turned Collaborate and Elevate to a subscription as a service, right? Really just think Manny as a service at the end of the day. And I broke it down to 24-minute consultations, right? Like, and I would vet you. And if I thought it was well, I would connect you. And, I think in business, we all go through trauma at the end of the day, right? So, I think in my life, I went through a lot of different traumas, but in 2020, really at the end of 2019, all 2020 and early 2021, I lost my sister to cancer. And, pretty much after that, about 3 months after that, I moved to Florida, Miami, during that pandemic craze. And basically, Miami was great from a networking perspective. I stayed there all 2021 up until summer of 2020, well, really end of 2022. Um, but Miami was really good because I was only charging $5 a month, and I got woken up when I met someone that said, "Manny, I want to pay you, but I want to pay you more money. So literally go home and raise your rates." And the next day I did that. And then something else happened. I'm still just learning venture capital. I feel like I'm getting pretty decent. I'm building friendships. A lot of my founders are, friends are raising capital and stuff like that. But then a day I wake up and then, a company we all are a part of changes their name to Meta. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. And then they roll out an initiative called Meta Elevate, targeting Black businesses. And I was like, damn, that's really interesting. Right. Then, so I'm gonna pencil that. That was in 2021. Then and then, so long story short, I figured I need to pivot. So really, we now have over 300 customers. There's, one firm growing up that I always respected in Ohio, and Jumpstart Ventures, founded by Ray Leach. He helped to write the Ohio Third Frontier, which was like a $1.2 billion grant to stimulate Ohio's economy. Ohio really won on a national level because we were the only state that got that. Tulsa, Oklahoma got a similar thing, which is why Tulsa is really doing really, really well, especially for Black businesses. For example, Black people raise under 2%. In tech, they say a whole 1% comes from Tulsa, Oklahoma. Interesting statistic. So ultimately, this $1.2 billion got spread across at least 5 institutions. Jumpstart, um, Ventures, kind of like high stakes poker. Jumpstart made some great bets. One of them in Ohio, we all know, Cover My Meds, and that kind of separates the fun with a unicorn. And also from a Black founder perspective, I went to high school with a Dawn Dixon. She raised from Jumpstart. Rodney Williams, who listener and solo funds. Jumpstart invested in both of those companies. Jay-Z, Oprah has gone on to invest in these companies. Travis Holloway, Joshua Reed, I just posted on my LinkedIn. We led that round, $2.4 million founder from Dayton. Darren Oko, I could keep going.
Yeah.
Right. So like seeing, and then the numbers, if I'm just being honest, Jumpstart 180 investments plus, but over 30% of their fund is minority founders. So Ohio's a very slept over state. And when I was in Miami, Florida, and Bitcoin was crashing and FTX was failing and all this stuff, I realized, I had a kind of, I had a very, I had a moment where I need to take my talents to go back home at the end of the day,
Well,
and
we're glad you came home, man. I'm going to be honest with you. One of the things that I love about you, Manny, is that you're not afraid to tell people the roadmap that got you there. And that's a big deal. I know that one of the things we always want to do is harp on the history of our founders and why we bring people onto the show so you can have some context and know that you're a real person. You have gone through the ups and downs of being in tech and finance, which so many of us have, been curious about, right? We've all been eavesdropping and curious about it. Some of us have dabbled in that. But one of the things that I love that you've always done is you've always respected the process of having connections with a meaningful outcome. And I think that that's a big deal. I mean, you are a man that I see as somebody that's got a pulse on tech, marketing, and venture right now. And there's a reason for that. You've been through the highs and the lows. You've been through the exits. You've been through the crashes of entire, industry silos, basically, right? And you've made transitions that matter, but you've been able to maintain your community and your connections and really elevate those around you, regardless of all of the whirlwind, all the turmoil that's going on in the world. And I think that's a big deal. It's one of the reasons why I wanted to speak today and bring you on, is because of that stability you have just in the way that you vet and create connections. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about how you do that with Collaborate and Elevate, and kind of what the direction is here on out?
Yeah, no, thank you. In 2018, I read a book called Super Connector, and I don't know if Ryan Holiday or somebody, I think Ryan Holiday might have wrote it, but basically it was a headline: networking is dead, and you need to build relationships. And thank you for the comments, because you kind of said that you need to really build relationships with people and learn how you could add value to them at the end of the day. And so I would say every collaborated and elevate event, I kind of tried to apply that. And then, it's really just consistency, I think, with, I mean, I think it's just all consistency. And I think for me, at the end of the day, I created something that everyone could afford with collab, right? And then there's
Yeah.
I think the strategy, right, is to get volume. And then when you get volume, you could talk to enterprise, right? So JP Morgan Chase, we've been a vendor with them since, I think, like end of 2021, right? And that's because of, we have hundreds of businesses that are customers. We know what their goals are and we're connecting them. I also, I'm just like, one day I looked through all my cancellations, and like 90% of them went out of business. So then I'm like, is it my fault they went out of business? Then after a while, it's like, no. So then I was like, okay, well, how can I communicate? How can we be more available? Right. So I think it's just, with the collab, which COLAEB, that's what, how we want to pronounce it, collab. Um, when you have a product that's affordable, and then it's a matter of you just being consistent and showing up every day and becoming more efficient using tech, right? I think it is easy, because there are people like Adam, and there are partners that will, I mean, I don't think, look, at the end of the day, I think we live in one of the greatest countries, and I think everyone wants to grow their business. So
Yes.
I just want to be in a position where I am working with people that we're aligned on goals, and I don't like having to, read minds at the end of the day. So wherever I'm at, anyone that I'm aligned with, I just try to have an alignment conversation, a vision. When we talk about Jumpstart Ventures, right? I'll just, right, because I think I get a lot of those questions where, how are you able to do this, that, and this and that? Well, it's alignment of vision at the end of the day, right? Like, I'm not going to start a fund, and I think that's the ultimate, right? But I think if I get that itch, I at least will have that conversation, right? But everything else is not that, right? If really, venture in a way is like a needle in a haystack, and I would say an agency and a software company helps me get to the top of that needle in the haystack, in my opinion, right? And I think that's really the gamble, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, aligning the vision is a big deal when you're connecting with anybody, and knowing the outcome and the goals and why you have that connection that's the playmaker, right? You're calling the plays, and you're really telling everybody where they can go to elevate their game. And I think one of the reasons that you've become who you are, Manny, and such a super connector is because, I mean, Pierce put it in here, learning from other people the skills that you don't have is integral. Like, that's a real deal. And thank you for everybody that's in the chat. Of course, if you are here and you're chiming in, you're letting us know. Hi, Mike, by the way. This is a conversation that we want to have. So step in if you have questions, of course. But that alignment of vision allows you to create outcomes. And one of the things that I want to harp on is, when you and I met, we met down at the Wave. We met because Michael Red was having an event. You weren't running the event, but I knew that you were somebody that was jazzed and energized to make things happen, and you were really surrounded by some people that had this magnetic pull. And there's the disparity in life, right? The people in business that start businesses, they're crazy. They're nuts. They've got energy. Like, why would you go and start a business? But if you surround yourself with those people, you can ignore the negative naysayers. You can ignore the pessimism. Yeah, you're going to find a break. You're going to find friction. You're going to find obstacles you've got to overcome. But when you have people around you that are capable and knowledgeable and can elevate your game, teach you new things, and create gateways to success, right? Being part of an agency that's giving people insights into how to stay in business, not just how to stay in business, how to elevate their business. Oh, now you're elevating your business. Let's talk about ventures. I wanted to ask you, and you and I talked a little bit about this last month, was, everybody says that startups dead, right? That's the big deal right now. Startups taking a halt. It's dead. Nobody's got capital. Woe is me. What do you say to that, man? Is that true?
I mean, I think you just have to have a more articulate conversation. I think that depending on where you're at, um, in the Bay, in the coast, some people really got spoiled in terms of valuations, and people want exits, and there are reasons why that didn't happen. I think if right, and we could, we could have that conversation, but the reality of the situation is I'm not from that world at the end of the day where like no one's ever, you know, gave me 10 million pre-seed off an idea. I always had to build something and rub two sticks and start from there. Um, and I could tell you that if you're a builder right now is the time to be alive, especially I think with AI and how you could get to profitability and really have control over your cap table. There's abundance of capital out there. There's websites like openvc.app connecting you to 5,000 investors. So I don't think that is. I think there's too many people giving bad advice. If I'm just being very honest, I think that's probably the issue. Um, you know, Raising capital is easy. It's about how big you telling the story of how big the market is. Um, I don't want to say raising capital is easy. But if there's a
Raising,
blueprint, if there's a blueprint for raising capital, and a lot of this is first time founder issues too, as well. So I think you have to have the humility to, that's what I'm saying. Like, I think, you have to have the humility to get advice, and I've learned in my life. I remember when I was like 19, there was someone in the barbershop that everyone respected, and I was trying to get like a job, and he was getting his hair cut, and like I just kept talking to him, and then like I knew he was getting annoyed, and then so after he got done, he was like, "Yeah, young man, you're a very smart man," but and he like tapped on me. He was like, "Too early for me right now, but I know you're gonna be good, right?" And then I was like, oh, I always remember that. I'm like, man, like how did I, you know? So I think you just have to learn. Like I said, when I was in that, the person buying the company looked at the cap table, saw that I wasn't on it, and kicked me out the room at the end of the day, right? And the founder I was working with really had nothing to do. Now he would 2 years later would come to say, I actually regret that, and I wish I walked away from that deal and just kept building, if anything, because that was a sign. But um, I think you just go through things that, and again, the reason he kicked me out the room, he was like, look, I mean, this person, I mean, he doesn't have stake in it. So why is he's not a lawyer, right? So I think it wasn't, it's just, there are certain, you know, bureaucratic business
yeah, and there always
situations.
will be. There always will be.
Yeah.
You know,
That should be it. Yeah.
so what I'm hearing you say is, like, if you're a builder, if you're somebody that's willing to get in the trenches and make things happen, it's still a very positive experience coming out of the second half of 24 and probably into the near future. And I think one of the things that you keep reiterating here is the fact that if you surround yourself by people that are smarter than you and you do it right, and you learn and you strategically implement the things that can protect you as you grow, that is the hardest part. Because once you do that, once you've got a valid business and you've got a successful rock star team, to kind of steal from AMA board here, Mike, I think, that is a real deal. That is what substantiates you in business. And I think you're right. The pulse.
Yeah. I mean, I think, like, yeah, just to add on that, I mean, I think you just have to, I'm someone that has faith. So you just have to, if you ask, you have to be willing to ask to receive as well. But on the other thing, I think someone selling to startups, right? If you start a business selling to startups, then like you should sell to venture backed startups, right? Like you should kind of do that. I always, as an agency owner in 2017, if I wanted a client to pay me 100,000 in a year, they probably have to be doing at least 3 million in revenue, right? Or something like that. So I mean, I think you need to know who your customer is, because you really will get exactly what you attract at the end of the day, So I think that's important as well.
Yeah, and I mean that's what creates long-lasting and repeating business. I mean, if you're gonna create a business, it's got to be something that can last. Too many people, I feel, in the past, probably 2 years after 2020, focused on that built to sell mentality. Right, that book came to a height at that point. People were getting overvaluations, and then it was like, all right, are you here because this is a real business and a real struggle that you're putting a solution out for? Or are you really here built just to sell? Because if it's built just to sell, get out. Like that's what I feel is the negative side of, your world with it, which is tech marketing and venture capital. I think there's a bad taste in the mouth because of that. But I'd love to remind everybody that's here is if you're innovative, and Pierce put this in the chat too, if you're innovative and you're surrounded by rock stars, you have a real valid idea, and it's not just to build something to sell and make an exit. You can spin up in a matter of days. You can get clients in a matter of weeks, and you can start validating a perpetual business by reminding yourself that you don't know it all. You've got a good community, people like Manny
Yeah.
that's got good insights into different markets and regions that are being successful right now, regardless of the whirlwinds of the economy, times, changes in tech, right? I think that's a big deal.
Yeah, and it's kind of it too. It's weird. It's not weird, but it's just very interesting to me because a lot of this like new, it just got very big, I guess. I guess the venture world got bigger since the pandemic, but like it's I think you just should focus on what really matters. And again, there are really sound people talking in every coast at the end of the day. Um, and if there's one podcast I would recommend it, it's only This Week in Startups at the end of the day. Like only listen to that one, you know. And then I mean, and if you simplify it, maybe only pay attention to the funds that's been around for 20 years, right? And I'm not saying anything, right? But if you start, if that's an easy way to start, because all of this definitely is under 45 years old at the end of the day, you know. And at the end of the day, the internet, what, in 1995 didn't even really exist. So it came in, like it came, we have a first wave of big five companies. Now we're in a new era, faster chips, faster things could be built. It's going to cost less. So things are getting rebuilt. People know how to use their own brand to become viral sensations, right? And companies are catching up. You have Mr. Beast of the world that could become the president right now if he wanted. At the end of the day, we're on a different time. So
Yeah.
I think it's about, you know, I think it's just like, you know, again, just, you know, again, you can't, you know, I don't know, like you just have to be positive. I mean, things
No,
again,
yeah, I
yeah,
love that.
yeah.
I love your energy because so many of us in this community and those that are going to listen to this later may not be at the I need venture capital crossroads, right? They may be 10 years down the road. It might not even be on the horizon, but now that they're listening to this, maybe it is. Maybe that triggers curiosity. Maybe it challenges you to elevate your game and be more aware of opportunities. But one of the things that I've seen as a constant strength, and I would love it if you could speak to this a little bit more, Manny, is the people around you seem to really get creative and get active. And I mean, they get active. They start building and making a difference and challenging themselves. So how do people do that? What is the number one takeaway you think gets people creative and active in building a business?
Yeah, I think it is an ongoing consistency um of whatever problem you're solving, and then identifying, you know, how big that is. And um you know, and typically that's, you know, that excitement of the potential of what you can accomplish. At the end of the day, you know, Jumpstart, when we invest, it's 3 to 10 people typically. And then in 2 years later, if things go well, you know, that team is either doubled or tripled. That's a beautiful thing to watch at the end of the day, right? As an early stage investor. And that's where I like to live, right? At least for the next few years, you know, in that SMB to startup to get the Series A. I think that's, you know, where my skill set is. Um,
And I mean, basically getting creative and getting active is knowing that
yeah,
you
I just think
horizons.
I think it's, you have to put yourself out there. You know, hanging out with a friend, John, he's all about real estate. He thinks it's crazy to build in wood because there's more fires. A lot of people used to build, there's an idea to build in steel. He went all in and bought a warehouse, and now he's only building in steel at the end of the day. And he believes that that's the future. You could bring, right? And he's like super passionate about it. I don't know. I don't know. You got to find your thing. You know what I mean? Like, and just, and do that. And I do think that we live in such a copycat world that you're going to stand out when you find your own thing, and people want to work with you. And then it's, you know, um, and then yeah, and then the fun starts, right? But I do think then
Yeah.
challenges, new adversities are going to come, and then it's about how do you um keep that, you know. I think to each is his own, but I know, you know, I mean, yeah, I know, again, I try to surround myself with people that are doing really, really good things. And then I do think we do sometimes in business, we just kind of need to separate the personal stuff,
Yeah.
right? So maybe you should take breaks, you should go on vacations. I think sometimes a lot of things get tricky when the intertwinement, because people out maybe burn themselves out and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I think when things are going well and everyone's in alignment, like that's what's fun at the end of the day.
Yeah, and you got to feed that.
That's what's gonna get you jumping out of bed at
Yeah.
5 a.m. in the morning. I don't right.
It's one
And
of those things that's, yeah, it's hard to
yeah,
remind yourself of the good times when you're going through the struggles, but you've got to feed that frenzy. You've got to feed that fire to create and grow. And you're right, surrounding yourself by people gives you insights to what they're doing to be creative, or you're learning that they're actually taking time out and being human. Like that's a real deal. Having a checkout, like do it. You need it. Trust me. Burning out is the worst thing you can do, especially if you've got a valid idea with people around you that have committed confidence and their livelihood to your idea, right? So
yeah.
understand, step up to the
And I'll
plate.
say this too, even on the dark days, just doing anything, posting on social media, just being consistent at the end of the day. Get your story out there. You never know what could happen.
Yeah, no, I agree. So, Manny, one of the things we like to do, man, I know we're getting to the end of our hour and we've kind of talked about the journey that you've had creating this awareness, this pulse, because really you're the man with the pulse on everything happening in between startup to exit planning, and taking that venture ride. I want to open this up as a conversation, right? I want to, open it for any questions. We've got a few questions in the chat if you want to check those out real quick. I think Mike had a question, and then Pierce was harping on that excitement is definitely infectious, especially when it represents your idea and company. So one of the things that I would love to hear from you, and then we can go to this question in the chat, is what's on the horizon for Manny? Like, what's the big event happening this year? What is the big deal in the next 60 to 90 days?
Yeah, no, I think it's, I'm really using July as like a strategic planning. Um, and just to really, I think, just get organized and focus on process, and how I um do things. Yeah, I just think a lot of this is being able to not being able to manage your time at the end of the day. I think that's the most important thing. So, whether that's traveling, going to, my friend is doing an event too. He's Sudanese, so he's doing an event in Brooklyn to benefit the Sudanese community in New York next week. So I'm going there. I have another friend that I've known her for years, and I met her in Miami, and I think she is the best net worker I've ever seen in my life. I've never seen anyone work a room better than Alana Media Villa. And, the beautiful thing about Miami is you just met so many really smart people. And she was an early Bitcoin investor and also worked at Google. And she didn't like how Bitcoin is viewed as a dirty coin. So she made a documentary to tell people more about it. And I implore you all to learn more and go down that rabbit hole. That documentary is premiering in theaters in October. So I'm going to Nashville next on the 24th to see one of the early premieres. So I think just for me, it's I think a VC at the end of the day, like to be good at the job, you have to stay, you know, ahead of what's going on, and you have to be kind of understanding how big problems are and finding entrepreneurs that want to tackle these big problems, right?
Yeah, and there are a lot of big problems. And Pierce, I know you got to take off. If you want to say anything real quick, we can open it up for you.
Nothing in particular, just that like a lot of this resonates because basically for a little bit of background about my company, like it started as this little side project and I did the customer learning lab with Rev1 and they basically, drilled holes into the idea. And the very first thing that like I was presented with when meeting with my like representative for that learning lab was a list of 200 apps in a similar niche that had all started and failed and gone bankrupt. And they were basically like, defend your position. Why are you unique? And so like I totally feel Mike's pain where he's talking about like being in a blue ocean and like it really comes down to what is your company representing and what's the mission that differentiates it from anything else in that space and like having that unique vibe to it that people can really identify with. And so like building that throughout the journey, really understanding who you're building for and exactly where it's going to be delivered, I think is like absolutely key and has been like the biggest learning for me personally. It's been like a 6-year journey and small announcement. We actually just launched for iOS today. So like it's kind of an exciting thing for me. And I've been attending a lot more of these events and hanging out with people and just like trying to learn more every day. Even when I feel like now that I've kind of made it with this launch, it's like I still realize every day there's like a million things I don't know. So I think it's about, yeah, just like keep learning and keep evolving the idea, and eventually you'll find your niche and like deliver what you're trying to deliver. So I want to thank Manny for the invite to this. This was a great little chat. And like I said, I'll be at Rev One's event tonight. If anyone else is going to be there, it would be cool to meet up and have some pizza or something. And yeah, I'd love to connect with any of you guys on LinkedIn. Feel free to shoot me an invite. So
Yeah, no, we appreciate you being here, and I know you got to drop. So, and
Yep.
there's some wonderful value there too. I mean, could you imagine you have an idea and your advisor comes to you and says, "Here's 200 reasons why it's failed. Figure it
Yeah,
out. Defend it."
I read every single entry on that list, and it was really painful, but it helped so much. And yeah, just being willing to like you said, I think you said it earlier, Adam, is just like being humble and like ready to learn. I think Manny kind of echoed that as well. But yeah, I went into that customer learning lab. I know this is the perfect product, and it got obliterated at the end of that 3 days. But like it came out stronger on the other side. So I'll stop rambling, let you guys wrap up here, and you guys have a great evening, great day.
Appreciate it.
All right, bye bye.
Yeah, one of
Take
the
care.
things, and I'll open this to if anybody else wants to ask a question to Manny, of course, but one of the things I want to remind everybody of is Manny mentioned he's taking July as an inventory month to schedule and plan. Even though he's literally going to be on the move, meeting with people and giving them his energy, he's still focused on challenging himself for the rest of the year and into next year rather than waiting for December 31st. And Patty, you and I were on a call just last week talking about this, right? How real founders make things happen constantly as opposed to waiting for these deadlines that are just made up. Tax day and December 31st, and we overwhelm ourselves. So if you are going to challenge yourself to really create some energy and be surrounded by people, get out, go to these meetups, go and support your friends, go and celebrate their successes, their small wins, because guaranteed at some point it's going to come full circle. And it matters to do things and then remind yourself, like, yeah, even though I'm here and being present, it's not a bad idea to go home at night and focus on my own business and remind myself, like, I got some steps, I got to feed this fire, right?
Yeah, for sure. No, I think I have no kids, right? I am dating someone, but when Alex Young told me about Adam, he said, "Hey, he's a really good family man, and he does a lot of good stuff in the community." He didn't start the conversation with, "Hey, he's accomplished and done all these things," right? So I think at the end of the day, that's what how people remember how you feel, right? And in that same vein, keep business that simple, right? Like I think at the end of the day, I'm someone that I've kept all my companies very simple at the end of the day, right? I think it comes down to whoever is willing to be a customer needs to understand where we are at and where we're going. Period. Right. So I think sometimes it's easy to just simplify what you're doing. It's very hard to get someone to pay you a lot of money in the beginning and then pay you less over time. But right. It kind of doesn't really work that way. Right. So I think it's, there's a level of that, because to me, stress comes when you do too much. You have too much on your plate. So it's a balance of it. Right. I think that's where it comes from. I think you have to know what you want to take and grow accordingly at the end of the day. I think patience takes like 10 years. If you look at all these companies that we look up to, they've been around for 10 plus,
Yeah,
I'm seeing,
overnight success, right?
yeah, like definitely after year 3, there's something special, but I think after year 5, there's something, but it's the psychology of people. If you think about it,
Yeah.
they see your brand
I
over
think
time.
that's a new phrase we're gonna have to coin. Simplify how you make them feel. That's a powerful takeaway from this exact moment. And I think answers the question Mike was asking about too, the blue ocean effect. Like, simplify how you make them feel. I mean, if that can be answered, then run with it. And Jonathan, I apologize for speaking over you. I know you had your mic on.
Oh no, I was just it's a lot of this just resonating. A lot of what we're talking about is, I was, as soon as you said it's about how make people feel, I just remembered that very famous Maya Angelou quote. And it's like, it's true. You think about, it's about so much of business, it's about doing, and so much of business is about being productive and getting stuff done. But ultimately, when it boils down to it, is your reputation and a customer's or a client's willingness to work with you again has a lot to do with how you make them feel, right? Even if, for example, I've worked with, I worked with a couple different tax people. And the one that I stuck with is not the one who has the best credentials, is not the one who has the best backup. It's the one who follows up with me and is like, do you feel good about this? It's the one who follows up with me and says, I know you get anxious around this. I wanted to make sure you have enough time. Like that kind of thing, where I sit there and I go, you might not have, a PhD or the masters or whatever, the Fortune 500, but you do know what you're doing, and you've made me feel that I can succeed in whatever you're helping me with. And you can't buy that. You can't pay for that. That's the kind of, though, the word of mouth stuff that has the real value to it. And it's just great to hear that spoken in such a forceful way. I am very curious to know, there's so much of what you talked about is about how you seem like you're so good at learning. One of the things that I think seems like such great about you is you're so open to like networking and learning from other people, and like having confidence, but not letting ego get in the way of being like, no, I'm gonna work with people who know what they're talking about. They're gonna make me better at what I do. Do you have what advice in this, if you're looking for advice, you guys rewatch this hour, but what's another thing you could share with us, or what's something that you tell yourself to stay humble, to remind yourself that, you can get big and successful, but you still have the opportunity to learn from anyone that you meet?
Yeah, no, I think well, The Alchemist is a book that popped in my head. I read that when I was
Oh,
younger.
so good.
Yep, and then I always think about that book now as as I'm getting older, and it's like, okay, well, like how does this apply in my life, and to really just trust your gut, and I just think at the end of the day, I just think we all aren't the same. We all have a lot of differences. So I just try to really not let us get divided at the end of the day, right? And make assumptions on people, and I think, I mean, and yeah, and just I think if you could do that, you end up in a lot of different situations. And then at the same time, it's like, people make, you have to understand why people make decisions. And at the end of the day, when someone makes a decision today, they're so many times, right? I'm not saying every time, but many times they don't know what the effects could be.
Yeah.
What, like, many times people make decisions assuming the effects would be good at the end of the day, right? Right. Our president wanted, 3 strikes you're out at one point. I'm just saying, I didn't make that up, right? You can find it up, right? So you never know why they say decisions and da 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 da. And I'm not trying to say I'm going to side another way. I'm just saying, right, it's very, so I just think we live in a world that it is very, we make it hard on each other, cast a lot of judgment, we kick people out, and I just try, I don't know if it's because I'm from a small island with 110,000 people, and there's like people living in shacks and still using the restroom outside, and they would kill to be in a country where they could earn 550. And I'm not saying that's a good wage, but
Yeah.
I think I think when you travel and you see different things, you can't take what you have for granted. And at the end of the day, so
No, you're right. Awareness is a big deal. Creating that awareness, I mean, that keeps you from, and Patty dropped an unanswered question, but that keeps you from casting judgment. Judgment stems from the seeds of self-doubt most of the time. So if you don't even know your own value, if you don't even know your own reason for sticking around and doing what you're doing, it's probably time you look up and go see the rest of the world and remind yourself, like, okay, I've got more to learn. I've got more
yeah.
to give.
Yeah.
And it's give and take. And you've done a great example of learning, growing, turning back around, and giving back. And I really appreciate you for that, Manny. And I know Patrick's got his hand up, so I'll turn it over to him.
Manny, this is great stuff. I mean, I love listening to you, and some just not really questions, but things I pulled from things you're saying, and what Pierce said before he had to drop. What's the universal language? Pain, but discomfort is universal. Comfort isn't necessarily universal. And when looking for investors, I mean, if you can keep it simple and let people know you understand the pain and you have a solution, that's a universal thing. And I think a lot of folks, at least the ones that I work with, when they're looking at starting up a business and they start talking about venture capital and they don't even have solutions yet, and they start looking at, Apple started in the garage. And this guy dropped out of college and he became a millionaire. I'm like, okay, for that one person, let's take a look at the 999 others of that group. And it's important what Pierce was talking about with that shooting holes in, with 200 apps that didn't work or 200 business. You need to look at the whole picture, not just what you can see. It's very easy to see the success story and go, I'm going to build that. But if you're shining a flashlight on a spot. And if you look at what's in the darkness and the failures, which really aren't failures, they're just different outcomes, you can build a better business and you can ask for money and you can go back the second time and get more money. So this stuff is really, really important. And what I like about what you're doing very energetically is you're saying, I got a blueprint for you, and it isn't easy and it's not magic. And it comes down to know what you know and know what you don't know. So fantastic stuff today, man.
I appreciate you.
Yeah, I think this has been a great conversation. And I know that we're literally at the end of our hour, but if there's one thing to take away from this, it's that you're surrounded by people with superpowers. And their superpowers is experience, right? Experience is invaluable. It is something that will always, always, always elevate you and give you a leg up on your competition, on anything. The best way through a minefield, following somebody else who's already made it through, right? So understand that, understand your value, get out there, simplify that feeling. And Manny, thank you so much for sharing with us today your energy, your backstory, and really what's on the horizon, which I think, again, comes down to elevating the community, being available.
Yeah, no, I think we're just doubling down, tripling down on what's working. And, just, yeah, I think for me, it's fun to put myself in uncomfortable situations. I went to the events in LA for the BET Awards, and the entertainment industry is very interesting, you know, and that was interesting. And I think young people, right, their perspective is very fresh, and as well as older people, right, their perspective is very fresh. So I think you have to know the balance. We're in a very interesting time. A lot of people are retiring. There's a lot of different things happening. So kind of like what you said, it's wisdom, and it's I mean, look, if you have an issue that you want to challenge, or want to work with someone, I think you should present yourself upbeat, right? If you can't be a Debbie Downer in these conversations, like an investor doesn't invest in that stuff, right? So keep it as simple as possible. I think it's any investor wants to invest later on. At the end of the day, the first check is typically the smallest check. And any city you're in, you could find, this is one of the issues I've noticed around America. Whatever city you're in, the companies that are raising the capital, I guarantee you they're not getting enough attention locally. And I guarantee you could get a meeting with those founders. The founders want to talk to you at the end of the day. And that's one of the issues around America. At the end of the day, everyone pays attention to what's happening in California and New York only. And in every city, in Indiana, and every single city, those founders end up having to hop on planes. Most of their customers are outside of the state that they're in. Like, it's very interesting. So it starts locally, and then from there, it just keeps growing.
Yeah, starts locally and grows from there. So I appreciate you guys for jumping on today. Keep the energy, keep the positivity. Remind yourself that you've got a community of players that really can help you make that game a winning game, and get out there and connect. So Manny, thank you so much. Everybody else, Tamra, Patrick, Mike, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate you guys. Have a wonderful weekend.
Take care. Have a great weekend. Thank you.
Bye, guys.